Good rising, brethren. This is Big Judah coming to you guys from California. Before I begin, I'm going to give all praise to Most High Yahweh. Acknowledgement to Earthly Mother. Who is wisdom? Who is the Holy Spirit? Acknowledge Yahweh. I pray the Most High bless this lesson this evening. Gives more knowledge and understanding of the events of the past and order events that are currently happening on the earth. So we get a much better understanding of the things that are soon to come on the earth. Gonna take a look at a couple things here because it's very funny how many of the Vassals and the Vassals are trying to run away from their love of the Edomites. They're trying to hide the fact that they took the bag and wanted to be with the white man so bad and hated anything about the so-called Negroes. All of a sudden now the Latinos are acting like they're turning against the white man, and all of a sudden like they know that he's doing things wrong and they're standing up to him, which is like, it's pretty hilarious because you still go to church on Sunday, you still serve white Jesus, you still hate everything that so-called black people do. You want nothing to do with our people. And you can't get away from your past. Cannot get away from your past. You cannot get away from the history that you have and the things that you were Confederate against when you were against our people. So just because you make videos trying to talk about the white man and things that he does and you're Latino, I said that doesn't excuse the fact that you carried the water for him. You've done everything in order to try to be like him and to make his life easier. That's why you say we have great morals and we do all the jobs that you don't want to do. That is what you've always wanted to do. But take a look real quick here. When we're talking about Mexico and we're talking about the ancient people and the histories, these are the murals of Bonaparte. You Latinos can't keep talking about your history and Nahuatl and the and then stuff like that and things that was going on back there and Mexica, because there's no proof that you were those people. You were just given a history to hide who was originally there. Just like everyone is now all of a sudden wants to be Irish, and we were Irish and we went through the same things you went through. The people that came here that had the title of Irish were indentured servants. They did not serve 400 years of chattel slavery. We're going to listen to a couple of videos of people talking about these things because they're always trying now, everybody's a slave. We've all gone through the same things. But see, you became a vassal to the Catholic Church, to white Jesus, in order to hide the true people and their history. This is what's on the murals. 1300, 1400, 1500 years ago. Your Mexican president just said that when the ships of Columbus came here, that they didn't want to take at Latinos. Okay, they were looking at so-called Negroes when they got here. That's who the ships landed on. That's who was here in the lands when the ships from the Spaniards got here. So we're going to listen to a little bit of this guy's video right here because it's funny because he's talking about, the white man and stuff like that. I'm like, you guys have been doing everything for the white man. You were begging him to be part of the church so that you wouldn't be treated like Negroes. But see, now that we're at the end, all of a sudden now they're trying to show that there's there's some friction between all these groups of people when there's not. You guys have all been Confederate against the Most High's chosen people. You've been Confederate against people. Hold on, faster. Oh, don't do that. That look like this. You've all been Confederate against people that had this type of skin color. You were the ones that devolved everything into skin color. We know it's about people who have animated souls and people who do not have animated souls. And you test the spirit to see where your soul is. If you're doing wrong by the Most High's chosen people, you're not following His commandments, you think that you can just do whatever you want and there's not going to be any consequences, your soul has not been activated. So we're going to listen to a little bit of this guy's video because I want you to hear, all of a sudden now he's trying to act like he's an enemy to the white man all of a sudden.
You being white, I don't expect you to know our history. But that said, you being white, I do expect you to speak on it, despite your ignorance.
Now, it's funny because the so-called white man gave you your history. The so-called Spanish Europeans said they burned everything, burned all the records, and all of a sudden you guys pop up and now you have a history. Even though when you look on the walls of the people who were there in ancient times, they didn't look like this. So when you're talking about the white man and he doesn't know your history, yes, he does know your history because the so-called Europeans gave you the history that you have today. They had to approve the history that you have today because supposedly they got here and burned all your records. They burned all of your information. So whatever information that you have and whatever you're claiming was approved by the Catholic Church, by the priests. And the Florentine codexes that they have, they're the ones that approved your history. While they took ours away and gave us a fake, false history of all it was us coming over here on slave ships. And you guys have all bought into it so that you could have a piece of our history. So let me play a little bit more of this video real quick. I'm going to start it over.
You being white, I don't expect you to know our history. But that said, you being white, I do expect you to speak on it, despite your ignorance, as that is your nature. But if you allow me a minute of your time, I'd like to educate you right quick. Do you know where the term Mexican comes from? It's a derivative of Mexico. Do you know where the name Mexico comes from? It comes from Mexico, as in Tenochtitlan, Mexico, the name of the center of the Mexica, or those you call Aztec Empire. You see, when the Spaniard got here, he didn't have a letter for the SH sound in the Nahuatl language, so he replaced it with an X. Mexico became Mexico. Mexica became Mexica, or Mexican. Now, although those words have evolved to represent not only a country, but the citizens of that country, they do more than just that. They represent or pay homage to a people, an indigenous people that were here long before your ancestors knew there was a here to be. Do you know what this symbol is?
He's showing a Mexican flag. The eagle with the snake in its mouth.
It is the Tlaxcostalistli, the vision given to the Mexica, or those you call Aztecs, by Huitzilopochtli during the migration. It is an indigenous symbol that was here before the Spaniard. Hell, it was here before Mexico, or even Tenochtitlan. You see, this flag, that symbol, doesn't just represent a country, it represents a people. And as the people, I will fly this flag anywhere I damn well please.
So he was showing the Mexican flag and the people were walking by, but the people that were here before the Spaniards got here, he's talking about the indigenous people, looked like this. This was what was written, this is what was drawn on the walls, the murals of Bonampak. And I'm sure these murals are in many different places and probably in a lot of these different pyramids that they don't allow us to go into. So again, you can't talk about the so-called Spaniards and the so-called white people and the history that they didn't know about when they're the ones that approve the history that you have. Now, it's all about stealing history and hiding information and hiding a people. And everyone's been taken apart in it. Another video right here was sent to me here. Hebrew Israelites speak about white people going into slavery. And it's funny, you know, they use the Hebrew Israelites. They're using them so that, you know, as cover. Oh, well, you know, so they can say whatever they want to say. All right. Let me find this video real quick. I'm gonna play a part of this one.
So,
because they want to talk about how all of a sudden now everybody's been going into slavery, the Irish and everything else. Okay, the guy's comeback was very weak. The Hebrew Israelites that they use, but I'm sure that's why they put him on this show. Like the Bible talks about other nations having to pay double. It's very simple. It's right there for you to do. Right there for you. All these different groups want to make it sound like they've all gone through the same type of slavery that we have, which is absolutely false. None of them went through chattel slavery. None of them were considered property and not people. Let me play a little bit of this video though.
So, obviously, black people in America suffered under slavery greatly, right? But a lot of people have suffered under slavery. Arab people, I'm Irish. Irish people had slavery partially, especially during like British colonialism. Even the Welsh at some point were indentured under English people. What kind of separates black Americans as opposed to anyone else that isn't a black American that also is on the, you know, the receiving end of slavery, the blunt end of slavery?
And I'll just stop it on there because I don't want to hear the dudes break down. Oh, it's our turn. We want to have the same opportunity to put other people in slavery. No, it's called karma. It's called justice. The guy talks about indentured servitude. That has nothing to do with 400 years of chattel slavery. And the fact that you even, I'm Irish. See, again, we already know the black Celts were the true Irish were black. But again, this is how they've all worked together to hide history, to hide the things that they have done. And when they all try to make it sound like they're all, you know, oh yeah, I mean, we've all had it rough. The Arabs, the original ones were Moors. And they were persecuted by the church as well. They're trying to hide that by showing the Arabs you see today. Like they're the ones that were, you know, they were in control of Spain for 700 years. And always trying to hide that the black people had control of these places, and they took them over and hid the history. Hid the fact that the Moors were teaching everyone. Okay? Now this is very important because all of them were Confederate to hide this type of information. From ISIS Unveiled. And right now I want to say when the last time I looked up this book, the guy said that there's maybe 20 of these books in circulation of the first edition from 1877. Because the church got them and burned as many of them as they possibly could. This right here in the middle is a very important thing that the Catholics have been hiding, and all of these vassals have all been complicit in hiding this information. The literary resources of the Vatican and other Catholic repositories of learning must have been freely placed at the disposal of these modern authors. So these people were able to get a lot of these books. Okay? When one has such treasures at hand, original manuscripts, okay, papyri, and books pillaged from the richest heathen libraries, that would again be our books, our information, old treatises on magic and alchemy, and records of all the trials of witchcraft and sentences from the same to rack, stake, and torture, it is mighty easy to write volumes of accusations against the devil. We affirm on good grounds that there are hundreds of the most valuable works on the occult sciences, which are sentenced to eternal concealment from the public. Okay? So they all said that these books are never going to get out, because they don't want you to realize where all this information came from. That's why all these different groups have been, this is my history. No, this is my history. No. You got all this information again from our people, and now the Holy Spirit is returning it again to our people. So again, we affirm on good grounds that there are hundreds of the most valuable works on the occult sciences, which are sentenced to eternal concealment from the public, but are attentively read and studied by the privileged who have access to the Vatican library. The laws of nature are the same for heathen sorcerer as for Catholic saint, and a miracle may be produced as well by one as by the other, without the slightest intervention of the Most High or the devil. So what they did was they hid this information, and they've been practicing it behind closed doors, hiding the fact that they got their hands on our books, our information, and then they set up these gatekeepers to make us think that we never had any knowledge, never had any understanding. Our history began with slavery. And what you want to know something else is that they all knew that the end times was not going to be about a war, about World War III. They know that the destruction of the beast is going to be coming forth through knowledge, through information, through understanding. When we turned our back on trying to explain things to these Gentiles, started wasting our time trying to explain things to people who never activated their souls, that is when we began to grow exponentially. And they have been falling on their faces because, again, if your soul is not active and it does not reach up to the heavens, does not reach up to the Holy Spirit, does not get wisdom, does not get intellect, then you can only get so much understanding. Everything, just like when Moses was going against Jannes and Jambres, the priests, the magicians of the Egyptians, of the Pharaoh, they could mimic things, but they did not have true understanding and true power. That is what you're seeing with all these other nations. They are trying to mimic our history. But once you peel back the onion, you see that they really don't have any understanding. Just like the guy was talking about Mexico. And it's like, look, you can talk about the history of Mexico, but these paintings on the murals show a totally different people. Your books say that you guys were not the ones that built these pyramids, that these things were already here. These so-called pretendians are running around talking about DNA or talking about federally recognized tribes. I'm sorry, when did the Most High say that I had to get recognized by the colonizers who are only here temporarily? When you go to Joel chapter 2, the Most High says that he is going to remove this northern army, which is a hidden army far off. I just did the other video a couple days ago to show you that hidden army was any vestiges of the Spaniards. That was the northern army, or this hidden army that is going to be removed. So all of you guys have just been playing interference for the Catholic Church while they took our books and then they were practicing, this information. What do you think their monks were doing? Remember, their monks would just go to these places, these temples, and just study all the time. What do you think they were studying? We already know that they were not studying the Bible because that was illegal. So they were studying our books, our information on nature, on mathematics, on science, on astrology. They teach the world astronomy while they're practicing astrology. They're giving that exoteric to everyone while they're practicing the esoteric behind closed doors. They had to try to catch up to what we already had. We lost it for a little bit, but it's all coming back to us now. If you keep on reading down here, it goes, hardly had the manifestations begun to attract attention in Europe. Then the clergy commenced their outcry that their traditional enemy had reappeared under another name. And divine miracles also began to be heard of in isolated instances. First, they were confined to humble intervention of the Virgin Mary, saints, and angels. Others, according to the clergy, began to suffer from obsession and possession. For the devil must have his share of fame as well as the deity. Finding that nomenina went on increasing and multiplying, and that these manifestations threatened to upset the carefully constructed dogmas of the church. A whole community began, and that's the whole thing. The main thing is you have carefully constructed dogmas of the church. You have carefully constructed histories that were given to each individual group, and they are following that all the way until the end. They're following these dogmas that have been constructed by the church. This is what you signed up for when you became vassals and Vassals. That is why you cannot deviate, because you have been given a what? Carefully constructed dogmas as well as histories of the church. That's why when that guy's talking about, white people, I wouldn't expect you to know my history. What do you mean? You wouldn't know the history. They constructed your history, bruh. They constructed the history of these so-called Irish people. They constructed the history of the so-called $5 Indians, pretendians. Who do you think these carefully constructed dogmas were given to? And they were all given to you to throw off the so-called Negroes, to throw off the so-called Israelites. And it's not working anymore. That is why you have now worn out your welcome. That is why, you haven't worn out your welcome from Psalms 83. You've worn out your welcome from the Most High. And that is why he's going to kick you off of all of our lands. So it's very important. You look at carefully constructed dogmas of the church. And that's exactly what you're seeing. So all these videos that you keep seeing, these people talking about Wabos and they're the original people, and Mexicans, I would expect you white people to understand our history. When they're the ones who constructed your history. They constructed Hamite history. Hamites follow along with whatever they're told. All of the Psalms 83 are following the carefully constructed dogmas of the church of Satan. All praise of Yahweh. The acknowledgement of the earthly mother. Who is wisdom? Who is Holy Spirit? Acknowledge Yahweh Shai. Shalom.